Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the CyberGizmo, what we're going to be doing today is installing Windows 10 under Proxmox, and then we're going to attempt to install the Windows Subsystem for Linux and just check it out. I'm only going to be able to do version 1 for the simple reason that version 2 requires its installation to be on hardware. So let's take a look at that right after this. So the first thing we're going to need is, I'm going to go out to the Fedora site, and you can go to docs.fedoraproject.org. You can just do a search for creating Windows virtual machines using virt.io drivers, and it'll take you to this page, or you can go through this home quick dots virtualization and choose the option down here to create Windows virtual machines. This is necessary because Windows will not see the disk drive without these drivers. So we have to have them in place in order to do that. And it doesn't matter if you're using Windows to install WSL or not. This is just necessary to get Windows installed. And these are the ones you need right here, the VirtWin ISO, the stable versions. So what I'm going to do, I already have them ready. You also need a copy of Windows 10 Pro in order to do this, or you need Enterprise, or you need the education version. Either of those three will work. I cannot show you WSL 2 today. I'll probably come back and do that in the future. And the reason for that is you have to install WSL 2 on hardware. It will not run in a VM. So even though KVM has the ability to do nested VMs, Windows will not allow it to run. So I'm going to create a VM here just to show you what we need to do to get things going. I'll make this version, the second copy of it, and I'll go to NAS. And then I'm going to scroll down, and for the first one, I need to grab the Windows, that one. I need that one. And, well, that's fine. We'll leave that as default for now. Although, I think I'm going to go ahead and use the SPICE drivers for this. A little bit better support. Now, for this one, we'll need the virt.io block in order for that to work. Now, Windows needs a minimum of 32 gigs, so I'm going to make this 40. So we have a little bit extra room, and then this is probably a little overkill, but I'm going to give it 4 processors. 2 sockets, 2 cores. 2048 is the minimum. I'm going to go ahead and give it 4 gig though. And then we'll just let the rest of it default, and we'll let it create it. It's right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this started. We'll open up the console. It's going to open Virt Viewer. And this will take just a second to get going before we see the Windows logo coming up. Let me put this in summary view so we can kind of see what's going on. It is running. I'm going to put that up over there. There we go. I'm going to say I don't have a product key. And then I'm going to go down and select Windows 10 Pro here. Accept the license, accept the license agreement. And we'll do a custom because, as you can see, Windows is not seeing the drive. So we're going to have to browse for, oh, you know what I forgot to do? I'll be right back. I need to mount the drive. I don't know if I can just mount it. I might be able to. Let me try it. I forgot to add the hardware I needed for the CD-ROM. I can try it and see if it'll spot it. And I'm going to go to NAS, and this time around I'm going to need to mount the VirtIO on my ISO. So we'll go ahead and create that. Yeah, it's saying I need to restart it, so I guess we will do that. We'll go ahead and shut this down. Oop, not that. I want to actually stop it. I'll wait for the green to go away. All right, now I should be okay. Now we'll get to wait again for it to come up. Go ahead and put this in summary view and make sure that it is running, and it is. Okay. Okay, we'll do an install now. I don't have a product key still. And then we'll do the custom install. And we'll do a load driver, and I'll browse for, there we go, that's better. So you'll just open this up. And where we want to go is VIO store down here. And we'll look for Win10, W10. And the AMD 64 is the one I want. And that pulls in the driver, and we'll go ahead and install it. Now this will carry on into the install, so I won't need to do this again. So yeah, at this time it sees the drive okay, and begins copying and laying down the file system for us. That's the only caveat that you need for installing Windows on Proxmox, or any KVM for that matter, is to make sure you have the VirtIO drivers installed. So I'm going to pause this, and I'm sure those of you have installed Windows before. So I'm going to pause this until we get to the first screen that has some input on it. So I've gone ahead and gone through the setup. I'm sure that we don't need to do that, right? So right now I have applied all the updates. I'll just make sure that there hasn't been any new ones sneak in. Shouldn't be anything. Oh, yeah, there is. It's always something with Microsoft. So while it's doing that, let's go out and look at something else that we need to look at. So if you type in at the search prompt MS Info 32, you'll get this list up of capabilities that your particular build has. And the first thing we want to make sure of is that the version is 1904.1 or higher. And of course, this one is. The other thing we'll need to look at down here, and this determines whether or not you can run WSL2 or not. Because this is running under a hypervisor, you cannot install WSL2. So I will show that one probably down the line. So for today, we'll just take a look at WSL1 since that's the only choice that we really have to do this. Normally, it should show 4 entries that have to do with the Hyper-V environment to tell you whether or not it's ready to go. And of course, in this case, it's not, and it's not going to work. Okay, so we're up to date. And just in case Windows is lying, did I say that? Just in case Windows has not found all the updates to install, is what I meant to say. So, all right, so the first thing we'll want to do, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the PowerShell, and we'll need to run this as administrator. And the next thing we'll need to have is some instructions from Microsoft on installing WSL. Looks like I've been here before, right? So I'm going to go find the Microsoft instructions, and they're right here. The only thing that you're going to need is this right here for WSL1. The rest of the instructions, you can skip all the way down to this part right here after you've done this initial thing, which is right here. So we'll come back up, and you can just copy this and then go to your PowerShell window and right-click this. Now, I've already done this. I cheated a bit, so that's all you would need to do there. The next step, they don't really show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up another window, and I'm going to put in WSL Linux kernel update. You need to have a kernel present on the machine. And so again, this is also a Microsoft document. And it tells me to download the latest WSL2 kernel, but that's all right. It'll still work on WSL1, and then you would just run this. I'm not actually going to do this because, again, I have already done it. But, yeah. And you can, and it already has it out there, so there's no need for it. So then, the next step is you'll need to restart your machine. Once you've brought down, the components here, you'll need to restart in order for them to become active. And you'll know it's active if you're able to do, let me just back out of this. If you're able to, get a response from that, a WSL1, if you're able to get a response from that, you're good to go. So the next step is to go to the store, and we need to do a search for Linux. There's a number of distributions. Now, I installed Ubuntu earlier, so I think what I'll do is put Debian on today. But you also have SUSE here, and there's Kali Linux that's also available if you wish to do that right here. So I'll go ahead and bring down this, and we'll go ahead and install Debian. Now, the first time you launch this, it's got to unpack the ISO file. Oh, it thinks I'm on WSL2. Okay, so I need to do something here, and I need to come down here, do a copy on this. Change that to version 1. And now it should work. Go find Debian. There we go. It's still giving me an error. So let's try Ubuntu. Let's see if that has any better luck. Yeah, okay. So this I installed earlier. So the first thing, at least you'll notice here, is this is not a full set of Linux. Let's just look at the kernel is a 4.4 release. That's kind of old. I think that was January the 1st, around sometime in January of 2016 when that came out. Now, of course, that's been updated. It is one of the long-term support releases, so that should be available, I think, until 2022. So there's nothing wrong with using it other than the fact that it is not going to contain drivers for some of the latest hardware, although I'm not sure for this that it matters. The other problem that you probably noticed is it's running init and not system D. So that means, now I tried, this was already installed. So normally all I would have to do with init, and you know, here's one of the other kind of weird things about it. Normally when we were running init, if I ran a run level command, it should show me which level I'm running the system under. And of course, then I should be able to, you know, change to init 3, for example, but it's saying this looks a little incomplete to me. I don't know why some of these older commands aren't working. It seems a little incomplete. Now, I'm sure that people that use this will probably comment about, well, you need to install this and this and this. And that's my point. It's an incomplete distribution, and it looks like you have quite a bit to do to install things. One of the other things I noticed that if I did a service SSH, let's do an enable. Let's just do a start. And you'll notice that it says no host keys available, which is kind of odd. Normally when SSHD starts up, it will look to see if it has the host file keys, and if it doesn't see them, it will create them. So, and this is kind of odd that it's giving me that message that says no host keys available. So again, this looks a little incomplete to me. So I'm not able to start the SSHD service on WSL1. Again, I'm sure somebody will probably comment that you need to install this, and that's fine. But I guess I could do, I guess what we could do is do a search. That's for Windows Server. Okay. So, hang on a second. I'm going to read through these real quick and see what I need to do. Okay. So those instructions were for WSL2. I did see some information about if you were interested in installing this under WSL1, there was some information on doing it, but it looked like in their case it worked, whereas mine is failing. One other thing I was going to tell you is back up here where we got this error. Well, when we were trying to bring Debian up, that error has to do with KVM and Hyper-V. So if you get that particular error number, the problem there is that Windows is seeing that this is running under a VM, and it's not going to allow WSL2 to run as well. So I guess a couple of things that we can do here is let's find out kind of how much disk this is taking. 12 gig is available, 28 gig is used. Now I'm assuming that this is sharing this with the operating system, and I see our C drive is mounted down here. Yep. HTOP just goes black. So I'll Control C out of that, and I was able to get top to run. Top is showing out of 8 gig. Now I did add 4 additional gig of memory. It's saying that 2.5 gig is in use. Now I assume again that is counting memory that's being used by Windows as well, because Ubuntu Server certainly doesn't take anywhere near that. Also, I was able to get Glances to run, although it's a little slow to start up. And it's also showing 2.5 gig in use. Oops. Right here, 2.5. As far as the CPUs are concerned, I am seeing those. They're pretty much idle, so they're not doing a whole lot. And of course, there's not a lot running either. So one of the things, oops. I think this is a Python script that it's going to run. Let me just look. I wish I could have multiple windows into this, but I think if I launch Ubuntu again, I think I'm going to get another container up and running, so I will just run this. Now, those of you who've seen my channel before know that this is one of the things that I run to baseline where the system is security-wise. And I can tell you that the speed of this is not great. There's always a pretty long delay here because it's searching for the PAM modules. So I'm going to stop this. Let me do and what I'll do is I'll just pause the video and let this thing run, and I'll come back, and rather than make you wait on it. Okay, it's just about done. It's finishing up here. So the elapsed time is 3 minutes, 32 seconds, according to this right here. Oops. There we go. 3 minutes, 32.7 seconds elapsed time. That doesn't seem very fast to me, but let's see what some of the other benchmarks do. Let's try it now. I've got 4 cores here. You can see 4 CPUs there. So let's do a sysbench. I've already installed it. And we'll hold the threads equal to 4. I don't want to overtax the processor since we don't have that many physical cores in the virtual machine. So I'll run the CPU test, and then we'll just simply tell it to run. This is running on the host machine for this is a Intel 6700. So it's doing, let's see, a total of 48,800 events. And of course, that puts it at somewhere around 48.78.24 events per second, as you can see right here. And of course, the elapsed time is always going to be around 10 seconds because that's the way this benchmark runs. The baseline is to record how many events can be processed within 10 seconds. So yeah, 48,000. So I'm just going to leave that here, and I'll go over to, I don't know if I left that up. Yeah, I did. Let's do that again. This is running on the same machine as the Windows machine, so we'll do the same thing. We have 4 CPUs here as well. Quite a bit less memory though. So what we'll do is go ahead and do a sysbench. Threads equal 4. CPU and run. Same exact command as I ran over there. And just see what we get in comparison to the other one. So yeah, I mean, they're the same, 4876.2, it's almost exactly the same. This is down in the noise. 2 events per second slower, that's nothing. So I'm gonna say that that is exactly the same. The other thing, let's see what Linus over here gives me for a speed test. I've never used Linus in this way to use it as a benchmark, but this is interesting. Also, I think what I also want to do is open up another window because I want to validate that this is running Python code. So I just want to make sure that it is, and I'm not talking off the top of my head. I want to give you facts here. Well, okay, let's try it again. One more and it will lock me out. All right, so let's bring up top or HTOP. Let's bring up HTOP. Let's see what it is actually doing. And it might be C. Yeah, it might be C code. I think that might be C. Yeah, I have a Docker container running on this machine, so I'm not going to leave that up because it will taint the score. And I will be back when this is done. Okay, so it's done, and this took 1 minute, 2 seconds elapsed time, which is right here. And of course, this one took 3 minutes and 32 seconds over here. So quite a bit slower. Also, it registered an index score of 61. Yeah, this is WSL being it. Ooh, that's not good. Klog is not running, which could, yeah, listen, not good. I've never seen Linus record that one before. That's a first. I think that has to do with the fact that this is kind of going to be a science project to set up. Normally today, our Linux distributions are not this difficult to set up. But for some reason, Microsoft has taken us back to the early 90s to show how Linux can be to their Windows users, maybe. I don't know what their intention is here, and I don't know if this experience gets any better under WSL2, although I will say that, you know, the page where I downloaded the kernel from was definitely for WSL2. As you can see right there, updating the WSL2 Linux kernel, and that is where I pulled this from. So I guess I have kind of a question here for Microsoft. Is your intent to show us the way Linux ran in the 90s? Because we don't use init anymore, and we haven't for almost 30 years. So, well, maybe not 30 years. Well, let's say 15 years at least. Systemd has been around a long time, so I'm not sure why they're doing that. And maybe somebody in the comments can help me understand that, because right now I'm really not seeing much of an advantage to using this for development. I mean, here, let me just pause this for a second, and I'll show you a comparable way to install them. So I'm going to go over here to the Docker Hub, and the official image is right here. Let's see what version this is. I'm not sure it tells me. It's Focal. It's right there. Okay, let's just copy that. I'm just looking to see what else it's got here. Also, one other thing I didn't show you. Now, Docker is up on this machine. 389 meg is being used, and there is a Docker container that is up. I think, yep, there's OwnCloud is up over here. So, yeah, 2.2 gig versus 384 meg, 390 meg, and I've got a Docker container up and running already. So I'm going to pull the Ubuntu, and that's how fast it downloaded it and got it ready for me to install. Now I could go ahead and bring this up. Let me do that. So I'm going to go ahead and launch Ubuntu that I just brought down. And I launched this in privileged mode. Top should be here. So let's see. I'm using, well, let's see. No, this one won't persist, but that's all right. Oh. Yeah, I don't need that, do I? Do I need to download these first? Probably. Yep. Okay, so we're using 428 meg of memory, and of course it sees all 4 processors. Just like the base core is concerned, I'm using 15 gig, but again, that's total. And I definitely am running 5.4. Now you can see that is a Ubuntu release 2004. The other one is running 2004.01, 2004.1. So if I exit out of here, no, yeah, it is 2004.1 LTS. So it's had the update, whereas this one that I'm pulling from Docker is not. So I guess I'm confused by this. And maybe I need to do the next step is to go to WSL2 and see what the improvements are. But first of all, it's an old kernel. Second, it's using a init and not systemd. Now I know that there's some ways that people have written up to how to install systemd, but again, I mean, this seems kind of incomplete to me. Why do I have to go through all these steps in order to install something when here? Let me go back in there again. Now systemd is not running here, but it is running on the outside. So. So that's why I was saying it's more like a container release. WSL is a container release. So, well, what's the advantage over just running a a Docker container over. Why am I doing WSL? What's the advantage? I just don't see it. Why don't I just do this? I mean, anyway. Yeah, I'm kind of a purist when it comes to Linux, and I know that. I guess the next step would be to try WSL2 and see what's in there. As far as the kernel being old, some of the applications that I was trying to run are pretty slow, and that is the lowest rating in Linus that I have seen to date. The lowest before that was around 64, 65, I believe, and not having the K-logs available, I don't get that. I understand that the kernel is outside, but it just seems like a really strange setup installation of Linux. And if that is the way Microsoft is presenting Linux, let me tell you guys that are using WSL, that is not how Linux works today. That is an old-fashioned release, and you're using a kernel that was built in 2016. That's 4 years ago, guys. 4.5 years ago now. So, yeah, why don't you come over and try the real Ubuntu Linux and put it under a KVM or put it on hardware and try it out, because there's so much more you can do with a Linux OS as you're based over that. And I'm afraid what you're going to end up doing there is spending a lot of time setting Linux up when there's no reason that you have to do that today. That would be like doing an Arch install. I mean, if that's your goal, great. But installing Ubuntu, you don't need to do that. Why go through all those steps? We hadn't to set all that stuff up. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. If you feel differently, and I'm sure some of you will, please leave me a comment below. Hope to see you all again real soon. And as always, please like and subscribe. And hope to see you all again real soon. And bye for now.